Have you ever had somebody yell at you out of nowhere or for no reason? Or perhaps you had trouble communicating with a certain friend, partner, family member, or a coworker to the point where you avoided having conversations with them? My name is John and I'm a psychiatrist where in my channel I discuss topics related to how we can live a more meaningful and purposeful life. In this video, I'll discuss how we can set boundaries appropriately without feeling guilty. I'll discuss why it's important to set boundaries with people, explain some non-productive ways of communication, and then go into some details about what assertive communication is. I think it's important to learn how to set boundaries appropriately so that we can learn how to work, connect, and bond with people in the complex world that we live in. Being able to communicate and set boundaries effectively will not only build confidence, but will allow for you to ask for things in order to continue to grow in certain areas of your life and to help build your relationships. The consequences of not being able to communicate effectively could be devastating, as this can lead to harmful or even destroyed relationships. In addition, being able to communicate effectively will protect your peace and also foster well-being. This will also allow you to love and respect others while inspiring them to do the same in return. So now I want to go into some of the non-productive ways of communication, and I'll kind of demonstrate it in this drawing here. The first non-productive communication is passive communication. Passive communication. Passive. These are your individuals that are non-confrontational. They might avoid conflict or talking about the conflict directly. Or they might even be quote-unquote fake nice to a person that they are having a conflict with, just to avoid that confrontation. And then sometimes they'll even talk about that person behind that person's back. So this is passive communication. Passive communication can lead to somebody's wants and needs rarely, if ever, being communicated. So the next form of non-effective communication is the aggressive type. So I'm going to put this right here. This is our aggressive communicators. Missing the S there. So what are these individuals like? These individuals are people that are very vocal. They might be very direct and communicate their needs in a very rude and disrespectful way. So some examples might be yelling, swearing. They might even get physical and assault others. So as you can see, some of these behaviors may not be well received by the other party. And the last form of non-effective communication is called, probably heard this before, but passive aggressive. These are individuals that communicate passively while also being aggressive as well. Some behaviors that you might see in those that communicate in a passive-aggressive way are, for example, people might be sighing in frustration. They might have some more indirect forms of attack and hostility towards others. You might also see them like slam doors, among others. Basically, in passive-aggressive individuals, you'll sense this feeling of hostility and anger without them explicitly expressing these things. I just added some more details to this chart, and basically what I've written down here is that those that have a more passive communicative style might experience some internalizing emotions and behaviors such as anxiety, depression, and those that have a more aggressive communicative style or personality might experience externalization, where they may engage in reckless behavior, use of substances, get into fights, and etc. Whereas those that are more passive aggressive might experience both of these depending on where they are. So as you can see, it can get pretty complicated pretty fast. So what is assertive communication? Assertive communication is hard. That is why so many people struggle with it. And conveniently, that fits into our acronym here. H standing for honest, A appropriate, R is respectful, and D is direct. Wouldn't you agree that as humans, we all deserve to have assertive rights? This includes having dignity and self-respect and being able to say no when justified without feeling guilty. It also includes being able to ask for what you want directly. And I think it's important to understand that nobody is perfect, and we all deserve the right to be able to make mistakes and change our mind when necessary. The reason why it might be hard to engage in assertive communication, in addition to some of the things we already talked about with the non-productive communication types, is that people might not have the skills to communicate assertively, and they might fear repercussions of communicating their wants and needs. Somebody's communication style might be influenced by genetics and their personality, but it could also be influenced by how they were raised and how they were expected to communicate, or maybe they are modeling after somebody that they grew up with, and maybe they felt like their voice was not important, or maybe they felt like they had to communicate in a certain way to get a point across. So how do we communicate effectively and assertively? Here's a 3-step formula to communicating assertively. The first is you have to communicate what they are doing. Sounds very simple, but a lot of people miss this point. I'm gonna go over the 3 steps and then I'll kind of combine them and explain what they mean. The second here is how do they make you feel? And then the third one is ask/request. So for example, if somebody was stepping on my foot, I would say, 1, you're stepping on my foot right now. 2, it's causing me pain. 3, would you be so kind to remove your foot from my foot so that I will no longer feel this pain? Another example would be if I had a roommate that never did the dishes, I would say, hey, I noticed that you never did the dishes. When you don't do the dishes, it makes me feel frustrated. I'd appreciate it if you do the dishes in a timely manner. That's another example. At work, you might have a colleague that is always late to meetings. You might talk to this colleague one-on-one and tell them that you notice they were frequently late to meetings, and it makes you a bit annoyed and frustrated because you can't get your work done on time, and then you would request for them to come to the meetings on time. Now, I will say that communicating assertively does not always guarantee that the person will respond in a respectful, or they might not even honor the request that you're making, but at least it gives you some dignity and self-respect that you were able to communicate your needs and wants. So I hope this framework gave you some ideas on how to establish boundaries effectively without feeling guilty, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.